Welcome once again to the latest edition of Russia Unmasked from the Center for Russian Studies in Kiev, in which we challenge the propaganda published by the Kremlin against Ukraine and share with you a number of Ukrainian perspectives. My name is Tony Meehan. I'm based in London, and as you probably are aware now, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has been going on for more than 1,350 days. This week's news items, which we will talk about shortly, Russian Defense Minister proposes a full-scale nuclear test preparations because of the United States. Putin boasts again about developing nuclear weapons. Let NATO watch, quote unquote. Russia seeks to regain its influence over Moldova, according to the Moldovan president, and no Ukraine units are encircled in Ukraine by Russian troops. That's according to Ukraine's general staff. And a pro-Kremlin propagandist was detained in Estonia. Some of you will be familiar with our podcasts and my previous comments on Vladimir Putin, or should I say Putin. Mind you, he puts it on a lot, doesn't he? So that's an English joke. You will not be surprised at the following observation. There are many key and fundamental ways to understand Vladimir Putin. Few will be correct. Most will be wrong. That's quoting Tony Meehan from about 3 years ago. But anyway, Putin, in his own way, always controls and owns the people that he works with or work for him. The individuals, the policies, the economy, whatever, unless he controls it, each individual, person, group or situation are considered to be dangerous and potential enemies. So what has he got on Trump, or what has Trump got on him? Interesting. He never stops thinking or planning to remove, damage, confuse, and not always in the obvious ways, those he considers to be his enemies. Every word, political opportunity, perceived strength can be and will be used as a weapon. He will always test how far he can go. He will push to the limit to see what the pushback is. And through the response, he will determine a weakness and the strengths of the West, NATO and others, be that in militarily or politically or social context. He is not afraid to use a perceived strength as a weakness. Now, if you take the United States of America, its size and military power and everything else are amongst its many strengths. But he has the ability to define a potential weakness within that. If you look at the recent statement about introducing nuclear tests, because President Trump started to talk about nuclear tests, it's the counter, it's the give and take position that he adopts. He, and therefore Russia, is always the victim. Hence, his messages are primarily for his domestic Russian audience. For 25 years, Russians have been fed with, and I mean that seriously, a series of key messages, also known as propaganda. Russia is surrounded by enemies. Russia needs to be strong. Russians must remain as one body together. Together we will fight and destroy our enemies together. Russia needs a strong leader. Putin is the defender of Russia. Russia needs Putin. Therefore you need Putin. Therefore Putin is Russia and Russia is Putin. Now, that's a complicated but a simple way of saying what the messages have been pumped into the Russian brain for 25 plus years. So is it any wonder that he has retained power and control for so long? To ensure no one focuses on challenges or any of his decisions or statements and claims, he constantly changes the agenda, which provides him with plausible deniability when his promises, claims, aims, games and plans don't work. He presents Russians with the answers which afford success to his failures in the cause of Mother Russia. For him, contradictions are irrelevant. If he says one thing in the morning, another thing in the afternoon, it's totally irrelevant. It's simply another tool to confuse those he wishes to damage. Because of who he is, and the way he thinks and his position, the president of Russia, he constantly seeks weaknesses and therefore the potential to disrupt those he wishes to disrupt, be they governments, be they non-Russian affiliated societies or democracies, political processes, whatever it is. The obvious candidates are clearly the West, NATO, the EU, the UK, United States, Canada, and the not so obvious, the smaller, I would say minor states, but smaller states such as Moldova, and as far away as South America and Venezuela, Africa, Gaza. Pick any country, he will intervene, cause disruption and social confusion, all of which is considered to be a success for him, a success for Mother Russia. Understanding who his allies are confirms how dangerous he really is. China, Iran, Belarus, North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela. Friendly connections with a number of other former Soviet states. So therefore, his reach is global, wide. He is a threat to you, he's a threat to me, he's a threat to your society, my society, no matter where you live in the world. In our lead stories today, just as a simple example of what I referred to earlier, he contradicts himself and claims innocence, an advocate of peace. His actions tell another story, the story of invasion, death, destruction, continuous war, resulting in more than 1.2 million Russians dead or injured. Now we're talking soldiers here, we're not talking civilians. Don't forget the civilians and the soldiers that he's killed from Ukraine. And don't forget Russian losses from the 5 previous special military operations in his 26 years of running Russia. Today, Russian Defense Minister proposes a full-scale nuclear test preparation because of the United States to justify their action, which is in breach of agreements, international agreements. The Kremlin leader, Vladimir Putin, and members of the Russian Security Council said Russia needs to prepare for full-scale nuclear. Why? They're not being threatened by any form of nuclear war or anything, but really it's a political propaganda threat. And so that because the United States claims they are deploying, this is Russia claiming, that the United States is planning to deploy missiles in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region with a flight time from Germany to central Russia in 6 to 7 minutes. Moscow must maintain a nuclear potential and respond appropriately to Washington's moves. Now, as far as I'm aware, and this may illustrate my innocence, the West has held nuclear weapons in one form or another for probably the best part of 50 years. So why all of a sudden, because the United States says it is, if it in fact did say that, that's another question. They make it up as they go along. They really do. Russia has always strictly adhered to and continues to adhere to its obligations under the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. We have no plans to withdraw from these commitments. Well, if you have no plans to withdraw from those commitments, that is a contradiction in what you've just said previously, that you're going to do nuclear testing, etc., etc. In the same breath, Putin unashamedly announces that the world's Russia's latest, greatest nuclear weapons and invites NATO to watch Russia test them, do them. Poseidon and Besedin, I'm sorry about the pronunciation, missiles. So his agenda is to extend the threat of these new weapons to involve a station on the moon. Now, if you notice, he's gone from one subject to another. He's from one point staying close to the international agreements. Secondly, he's going to he's launched and introduced new nuclear weapons. And thirdly, he's going to set up a station on the moon. Now, talk about confusion and talking about understanding it. And also, one must not forget that because of the war, his war, Russia's going broke. So in classic Putin style, he closes by plying the innocent bystander, stating Russia poses no threat to anyone. Russia, like all the other nuclear powers, is developing its nuclear potential, thereby, in his mind and the mind of his people, justifying his decision to focus on the threat of nuclear weapons because his enemies are doing so, which we know that they are not. If we talk about developing nuclear weapons, he's been bragging again about Moscow's nuclear weapon development. At a ceremony to honour developers of the weapons, he does the circle. It's for his domestic audience. The Kremlin ruler boasted that only domestic materials are used in these weapons, which means to say that he's obviously using foreign-based items in order to make them work, because he says one thing and means the other. According to Putin, these technologies will help to build a station on the moon. Why does Russia need a station on the moon? I hear you ask. I ask myself the same question, and I really don't have the answer. He also stated that Russia has begun a mass production of the Yerevan missile system. Moving on to another story. This is Russia's interference in other countries' activities and all the rest of it. You will be familiar with the recent reports that Belgian intelligence have shown concern about unknown drones flying around military bases, NATO military bases in their country. The Belgian national news agency Belga, citing sources within the security services and as reported by European Pravda, says that Belgian intelligence services believe that a foreign state, most likely Russia, is behind the recent incidents of drone interference which have disrupted air traffic and military operations. Belgia's sources pointed out that several signs of foreign involvement in the recent drone sightings. The drones fly in specific formations under the cover of darkness and in the proximity of critical Belgian facilities. So it's it isn't a 15-year-old sitting at the end of his garden playing with his remote control, having fun with his personal drone. These are coordinated and information gathering operations. Concerns about possible Russian involvement has increased amid talks about using frozen assets. If you remember, there was a proposal in the EU, in the European Council, to use several billion of frozen assets which are held in a Belgian banking system. And Belgium has shown concern about it, that they don't want to be held responsible for it as a country. So therefore a target by Russia. And here we have, according to Belgian intelligence, an example that justifies their concern. Moldova is a small Eastern European state. Its president, Mai Sandu, has said Russia is seeking to regain influence over Moldova by installing people loyal to it in key state positions. According to Sandu, Russia cannot reach Moldova at the moment because Ukraine is resisting. Sandu explained that the political and strategic risk remains high, saying Moscow wants to install loyal people in key Moldovan institutions who would follow the Kremlin's directives rather than act in the interests of their citizens. And we've seen this before. There's nothing new here. It's something that's been going on for decades. She stressed that such an influence has been visible in previous elections when Russia attempted to gain power in order to use Moldova against Ukraine, Romania and other states in the region. Again, propaganda and also political influence. In Estonia, another one of these countries we don't really talk about possibly enough, the internal security system there and the services there detained the pro-Kremlin blogger Oleg Besedin on Tuesday the 4th of November on suspicion of non-violent activity directed against the Republic of Estonia and violating international sanctions. Another example of what they're going on about, what Russia's and Putin are playing at. Belgian government, again, together with the European Commission, held a crisis meeting on the use of Russian assets. I referred to this earlier. Senior figures from the European Commission and the Belgian government are set to meet, were set to meet in an attempt to resolve a political deadlock over the use of frozen assets. Russian assets estimated to be a value of 140 billion. I mean, we are not talking small change, we're talking lots of money. And for Russia to lose 140 billion euros, I should qualify that, is a lot to their economy. According to two senior EU officials, Belgium is resisting the plan by the European Commission to use the funds without fully confiscating them, as the assets are held by the Brussels-based financial services company Euroclear. So therefore the onus and responsibility is with them and not necessarily with the European Union. So from all of us at the Centre, thank you again. Please share this podcast with your friends and those who you think will be interested. The online address is Russia Unmasked. We'll be back with more news from Kiev soon. Until then, Slav Ukraini. Ukrainians were, are and always will be here. Vladimir Zelensky. Thank you.